Okay, before I start the meeting, I have to give you the safety tips. So the safety tip for this morning is that the security office is open 24 hours a day. The extension for the security phone extension is 515. And if you're here, just dial 515 from any beige in-house phone, which I don't see to direct you to. If you're outside the building or using a cell phone, 562, is anybody writing this down? 562-499-7515 to reach the security office. Okay, so that ends our safety tip. And I'm going to bang the gavel. Hopefully it's not too loud. And I'm calling this business meeting of SWANA to order. So, good morning. Based on the proxies given to the International Secretary by the members who voted in the recent election, together with members in attendance here today, a sufficient number of members are present, and I hereby declare the existence of a quorum. Brian.
Good morning. Copies of the minutes of the 2012 annual meeting held in Washington, D.C. and the fiscal year 2012 financial report were made available to the membership on the SWANA website. Before this meeting, and no comments were received. Hard copies of both were available at this time if anyone would like to see them. I therefore ask for a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes and report at this time to accept them as previously presented. Is there a motion to accept? And a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to give a short report about our meetings this past weekend that we had on Sunday to meet the EC Executive Committee and the International Board both met, and we had a couple of things that came out of that meeting that I wanted to share with this group. First, the organization is growing, and we added a new chapter. So they came off provisional status and became a permanent part of the SWANA organization, and that would be the Quebec chapter in Canada. So that was significant. Second thing that is something that we do approximately every 5 years or so is we do some strategic planning. And it's been a while since the last time we did strategic planning, and we thought that this would be a good time for us to start that process again. We're going to do strategic planning at the mid-year meeting next year, and in preparation for this, we've appointed a committee. Michelle Leonard, our current secretary, will be in charge of that committee so that that meeting would be extremely fruitful by the time it comes around. And if you have questions or comments or feedback, input that you would like to see changes for SWANA, you can discuss that with Michelle, and I'm sure she will incorporate some of those ideas into the strategic planning process. And the third thing I was going to say was we also approved a new position on the International Board, and that would be a young professional position. SWANA is an organization that represents the entire spectrum, but we want to have the feedback of young people and have a set-aside position for them. So if you think you meet the definition, in this case, it's a cutoff age, 35 and younger, and if you're part of that group, I don't think many of you guys are, but if you are and would like to seek office, then we will be doing something about that in the future. And then the last thing I wanted to report is I have recently taken a position with NSWMA, and as a result, when I transition to past president, I'm going to be resigning that position to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest. And so the past president position will remain unfilled over the next year. one of the critical roles that the past president serves in is in the nomination committee. And so Jim Warner, who is the current past president, has agreed to take that burden on for another year, and I thank you, Jim. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm John Skinner, SWANA's CEO. And I'd like to report on how we ended the year in fiscal year 2013, which ended on June 30th. And it was a very good year for SWANA in many ways. We set a new membership record. We finished the year with 8,200 individual members. That's the highest end of the year level in the history of SWANA, and slightly higher than our past record, which we set in 2009. We had more than 1,500 new individual members joining SWANA during the fiscal year. As Ann indicated, we now have 45 chapters, including a chapter in every province of Canada and one in the Caribbean. And I think membership growth is a sign of the health of the organization, and it's directly attributable to the outstanding programs that the chapters, the technical divisions, the training faculty, the Applied Research Foundation, the board, and the staff put together. So thank you to everyone who helped SWANA set this new membership record, and let's break it next year. 2013 was also a good year financially for SWANA. Net assets increased, as they have for 9 out of the 10 last years. Our reserves are at the highest that they've ever been, and we've set aside enough funds to repay the chapter training loans when they are due with interest. And we've actually repaid over $420,000 in loans with interest to date, and we'll be paying off the remaining of those loans in the course of this year and early next year. 4,200 people attended our training and education programs. Chapter partnering and training at work was up 53% in terms of attendance. The e-session, our web seminars, was up 16%. Technical division membership closed at 2,950 members. The number of certified individuals closed at 3,440 members. That's up 7% from the last year. And the Applied Research Foundation increased the number of subscribers and the amount of subscriber revenues. So at the end of our 51st year, the state of SWANA is very strong. Thank you.
The International Secretary is responsible for the audit and verification of the ballots cast. Based on a tally and report from the Associate Director, the Secretary reviews the results and certifies that the number of votes cast by the ballot exceeds the quorum requirements, and that the number of approvals exceed the number of votes required if the voting has been held at a meeting. No ballots were declared invalid because of improper completion. As we now address the election of officers and private sector directors, Michelle Leonard will announce the votes cast. No votes will be taken here.
Good morning. So my job is to tell you about the election. To be elected, each of the nominated officers had to receive 364 favorable votes, representing a simple majority of the qualified ballots. Based on the Associate Director's review of the ballots, I hereby report that each nominated officer received approvals totaling at least 91% of votes cast. Therefore, I have determined and hereby declare that David J. Hornick, Brian Tippett, Michelle P. Leonard, and Richard H. Allen are respectively elected to the offices of President, Vice President, Treasurer, and Secretary, each for a one-year term. Given Ann's resignation from her past president officer's position, that position will be vacant for a year. I will now read the names of the private sector members that were elected, and if you'll hold your applause till the end. For the consulting category, Joseph Murdoch, Senior Vice President at HDR from actually Seattle, Washington. In the manufacturing category, Ernie Hines, PE Technical Director of Agro-America from Georgetown, South Carolina. And in the services category, Carrie Kelly, Director of Federal Public Affairs, Waste Management, Washington, D.C. We also voted on a number of bylaw amendments, and there were 4 bylaw amendments that were approved by the membership vote. The first was an amendment to bylaws section 2 regarding membership. The second was an amendment to bylaws sections 5.3.1 and 5.3.2 regarding the board of directors. The third was an amendment to the bylaws section 6.2 regarding officers, and finally, amendment to bylaws section 7, which was in regards to nomination and election of officers. Thank you very much.
At this time, I will take my last official act as International President of SWANA by passing the gavel. Please rise and welcome your new president, David Hornick.
Thank you. I'm only going to say a few words because I don't talk a lot unless it's outside of business. But I'm going to say I'm pleased and a little humbled to stand before you as president of the Solid Waste Association in North America. Like some, I came into the solid waste business to earn a career change. This one career change led to a career that has been very rewarding. Trash isn't a glamour field, but I find it satisfying. Many people talk about wanting to make the world a better place, save the environment. As a solid waste professional, we do this every day. We collect trash, we recycle materials, and safely dispose of it. We do this every day as we do our jobs. We gather at events like WASTECON, regional, state, and local chapter meetings and events. We exchange ideas and thoughts and have lively discussions. We even talk about problems and discuss solutions. The one thing that's continuous through all this is we communicate with each other. Communication, that's what it's all about. Every one of us here is willing to speak to each other or a total stranger. Anyone who has a question about solid waste, and if we don't know the answer, we probably know somebody who does. Our organization's heartbeat is this communication, whether through spoken word or written material. I hope to continue and encourage communication between ourselves and anyone else who wants to listen. Finally, I want to thank a few folks who've encouraged and supported my involvement with SWANA. Gary Martin, retired city manager of Ponca City, who first introduced me to SWANA and encouraged me to get involved. Craig Stevenson, our current city manager, who is supporting me during my journey through the chairs. The Oklahoma State chapter has not only been supportive, but has shown constant enthusiasm as well in my journey. Finally, lastly, but not certainly the least, are all of my SWANA friends from places near and far. Now, I have a little thing to do here. I'm going to present Ann with her President's Award. Ann has led SWANA for the past year through a continuing process of change. She has worked at improving the communications within the IB and between the association and its chapters. Thanks to her leadership, SWANA continues on the road to a bright future. Today, we recognize Ann's contributions as our president during the past year. With pleasure, and on behalf of the entire membership of SWANA, I award SWANA's International President's Award to Ann Germain, and she now becomes a life member.
Dave was scared to pin it on me. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank all of you. This has been an incredible journey for me, and it has been so special to be part of this organization. I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, and I have to start by thanking the person that encouraged me to become involved in SWANA to start with, and that was NC Vasuki. I think many of you know NC. And I'm sure many of you have heard this story before, but I think it bears repeating. One of the first SWANA conferences I was at, NC was sitting behind me, and they were asking for volunteers. So I knew that, he was paying attention and, he wanted me to be involved. So when they asked for volunteers for something, I raised my hand and said I wanted to be involved. And so they took my name down and said, okay, you're gonna do this. And then a little bit later on in the meeting, they asked for volunteers again. So I raised my hand and said I wanted to be involved. And so they took my name down and said they would contact me and I would be involved. And then a little while later, they asked for volunteers again. But I thought, I'd volunteered already. So I didn't want to overwhelm myself and just do everything. And, you got to have other people do stuff too. And NC leans over and taps me on the shoulder and he said, "Is your arm broken?" And so I said, "No," and I raised my hand again. But through my efforts at volunteering, one of the things, I think it's been said before, but it bears repeating, you get a lot more out of an organization than you put in. And if you volunteer, if you raise your hand, if you become part of this organization, it will give back so much more than you put in. So I encourage all of you to continue to be involved, to continue to share, and to continue to communicate with each other. So there are a lot of people here from DSWA. There are some YPs here from DSWA. I encourage them to continue to raise their hand as long as they're not broken. I know some of them had broken legs last year, but they can still raise their hand. And I encourage all of you, unless your arm is broken, raise that hand. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other business? I'm sorry. Right now, I'd like to acknowledge past President Jim Warner. Jim has completed his long journey through the chairs of the SWANA IB and officers and now becomes a life member. We want to congratulate Jim and thank him for all his hard work and dedication to SWANA. Now, I'm back on the right line. Is there any other business to be brought before the assemblage? If not, I declare this meeting closed.